Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into something we all think we get, but honestly, probably oversimplify. Culture.
Oh, yeah, it's one of those things, right? Easy to take for granted.
Totally. We're not talking about like going to museums, more like the invisible stuff, the
Yeah.
force field that shapes how we see everything.
It's like the background hum of being human. Always there, but do you notice it? Not really.
Exactly. But you sent in this document, what is culture-2.pdf? And it's got me thinking, how much does this stuff control without us realizing?
That's the beauty of a deep dive like this, right? We bring it to the surface.
Yeah.
And your document, full of aha moments, trust me.
Okay, I am so ready. So it starts with the definition. The sum total of material and intellectual equipment, like our stuff, our ideas.
It's on the right track, but like saying the ocean's a big bathtub, you're not wrong, but you're missing the point.
Right. There's more to it.
Way more.
Right.
The document actually quotes this anthropologist, Bronislaw Malinowski. He called culture a complex whole.
Complex whole, which
Yeah.
means
It's not just what a group owns, but their knowledge, their beliefs, those unspoken rules, the whole recipe that makes them them.
ooh, love a good recipe analogy. So it's like we both have kitchens, but mine's all about baking. Yours is spicy curry.
Exactly. Same ingredients, different outcomes. And that's culture in a nutshell. Ingredients mixed up, unique.
Okay, so how do we break down this complex whole? Make it less textbook, more like stuff we actually live.
I like to think of it having three main ingredients, always working together. First up, what people do, their actions, traditions, all that jazz.
Like how some cultures you got to bow when you greet someone, others it's a hug.
Exactly. Little things, big difference. And those actions, they come from the second ingredient, what they know.
So like the stuff passed down. Grandma's secret recipes, but for life.
You got it. Language, stories, values. It's deeper than just knowing stuff. It's about how you understand the world because of that knowledge.
It's like those stories become part of our DNA.
Precisely. And then the third ingredient, what they make. Art, tools, even technology.
Okay, but that one's always changing, right? The document mentions computers, the internet, social media.
And that's the key. Culture isn't static. It absorbs the new stuff, adapts constantly.
So it's more like a living thing than a set of rules.
Exactly. It breathes, it evolves, which makes studying it even more fascinating, wouldn't you say?
Totally agree. But if it's always changing, how do we even begin to understand it?
It's a good question, right? Like, where do you even start? And the document, it gives us a pretty cool framework, actually.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Hit me with it.
It's this idea of 5 key institutions. Think of them like the pillars holding up the whole culture thing.
5 pillars. So like if one crumbles, the whole thing's unstable.
Exactly. And they each shape how culture gets passed down generation to generation. So we've got family, education, religion, economy, and then polity.
Polity, meaning
Fancy word for politics. But basically, yeah, how a culture organizes itself, who's in charge, all that.
so no pressure on families, schools, governments. They're just shaping the entire world as we know it.
No biggie, right? But that's why this is so interesting. So where do we want to start?
Well, we're talking about foundations. Family's got to be the OG, right? Like literally the first culture you're a part of.
100%. And this document, it points out something really important about how family is even defined. In many African cultures, it's all about extended family, these huge kinship networks.
Yeah. Like how many cousins are you supposed to invite to your wedding? 5. 50. That's cultural right there.
Totally. It's not just mom, dad, siblings, it's aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins. Everyone's in the mix. And that changes how you see the world, for sure.
And with bigger families, you get different ideas about lineage, age, seniority, right? The document makes a big deal about those, especially when it comes to who makes decisions.
Right. Like in some cultures, your oldest brother might have more say than your dad in certain situations, or your grandma's word is law. It's all about those roles within the family and how that translates to the larger culture.
It's like family isn't just who you're related to. It's a whole system of power, respect, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And then you've got education. Think of that as the bridge between generations, how you pass down knowledge.
Okay, so like, is it your grandpa teaching you to farm, or are you in a classroom learning algebra?
Right. The document talks about how in a lot of cultures, teachers are almost like substitute parents, because they're not just teaching facts, they're teaching you how to be a person in that society.
But then what happens when what you learned at school clashes with what you learned at home? The document mentions how in some places, introducing computers in schools caused some friction because it brought in different values.
Ooh, yeah, that's super interesting. Like whose culture wins out then? Whose values are right? Big questions.
Right. And speaking of big questions,
Yeah.
we got to talk about religion. That's got to be a major pillar.
Oh, huge. Even if you don't personally subscribe to a religion, it shapes the world around you. The document defines it as belief in the supernatural, but it gets way deeper than that.
Right. It's like, why are we here? What happens after we die? Every culture's got answers, or at least stories that try to explain.
And those stories, they influence everything. From what you eat to how you treat other people. Like the document talks about animism, which is this belief that objects, places, even animals can have spirits. That changes how you interact with the world, you know?
It's like suddenly the tree in your backyard isn't just a tree anymore. It's got a whole history, a presence. Maybe it needs offerings. Who knows?
Exactly. And then there's the idea of a supreme being, a god. But even that has different interpretations across cultures. The document lists all these names like Lissa, Malungu, Chadanai, Katonda, Rua, all different ways of understanding the same concept.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. Like, same universe, different instruction manuals.
Right, and even within one religion, there can be so much variation. That's culture for you, always adding its own flavor.
Okay, so we've got families, schools, and religions shaping things. What's next on the list of culture architects?
Let's talk about something we might not always connect to culture, but it's huge. The economy.
Okay, yeah, because how we make a living, what we value, that's different everywhere, right?
Totally. Imagine, is your dream job to be a CEO or to inherit your family's farm that's been around for generations? Those are different goals, but both shaped by cultural ideas about success, you know?
It's like, is more money always better? Or is it about having enough to take care of your people? Totally different mindsets.
And the document does a great job showing how economic systems have evolved in Africa, especially with this move from old school barter systems to like cash crops and the global market.
Right. It talks about how in some traditional pastoral communities, wealth was literally measured in livestock.
Yeah.
Cattle, sheep, goats, more animals, higher status.
Not even just the quality of the animals, but the sheer number. Like, sorry, your herd's too small, can't marry my daughter. Wild.
It's so different from how we think about wealth now. And then there's that shift the document talks about, from growing what you need to growing what you can sell. Cash crops like coffee, tea, tobacco, all those things people grow specifically for trade.
And that, my friend, is where things get really interesting. Because suddenly, these local communities are plugged into this global system. New ideas, new technologies, it all comes flooding in.
Which changes everything, right? Not just what people eat, but the clothes they wear, the stuff they buy, even how they see themselves.
100%. And the document doesn't sugarcoat it either. It talks about how this dependence on cash crops often means becoming dependent on those former colonial powers, right? Exporting raw materials, importing finished goods, that whole cycle.
Which, let's be real, creates a power imbalance, right? It's not just about economics anymore. It's about who's got the upper hand.
Exactly. It shows you how economics and culture, they're inseparable. One influences the other constantly.
It's like a dance, but someone's always leading and someone's following, and that shapes the whole routine. Okay, so we've got families, education, religion, the economy, one pillar left, right.
Yep, the big P, politics. Or, as the document calls it all, official-like, polity.
Because every culture's got to figure out who's in charge, how decisions get made, right?
Exactly. And the document does this cool thing where it compares these different systems that were around in pre-colonial Africa. You had acephalous systems, which were decentralized, think elders, lineage heads, that kind of thing. And then you had centralized systems with kings or chiefs calling the shots.
I got to admit, I had to Google acephalous. Sounds like a dinosaur or something.
Right. But basically, it means without a head honcho. Power was spread out, not just one ruler. And the document makes this point that in a lot of those systems, women actually had a lot of influence. Not always out in the open, but behind the scenes, for sure.
See, that's what I love about this stuff. Always busting myths. We think we know how leadership works, and then bam, totally different system.
Right. Like our ideas of presidents and parliaments, those aren't the only way to run a society. And the document makes this really important point about how both these systems, acephalous and centralized, they were totally upended by colonialism.
Yeah, it's tough to hold on to your traditional ways of doing things when someone else comes in and says, nope, we're doing it my way now.
Exactly. And the document uses this example of Kenya's provincial administration, which was basically a colonial structure imposed on top of existing systems. And it argues that this whole top-down approach, It had a lasting impact on how people participate in politics, even today.
It's like once you've been told what to do for so long, it's hard to find your own voice again.
Right. And the document even uses this term, spectator political culture, to describe how some people become hesitant to challenge authority or to even participate in the political
It's
process.
like they've been pushed to the sidelines watching the game instead of playing it. Heavy stuff.
It is. But I think understanding these different systems and how history has shaped them, it can help us be more sensitive to these cultural differences. It's about having those aha moments so we can engage with each other in a more informed and respectful way.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So much to think about. Family, education, religion, economy, politics. It's amazing how these 5 institutions work together to shape a culture, even in ways we don't always realize.
It's like this giant invisible web
Right.
connecting everything and everyone. And the more we understand about those connections, the richer our understanding of the world becomes.
Couldn't agree more. Well, folks, there you have it. Another deep dive done. We hope you found it as fascinating as we did. Until next time, keep those brains curious.